Hello! Welcome to the second installment of Boomkin Guides with Trot. Today we'll be taking a more advanced look What the heck? Oh man. Oh, he's level 80. Lol. Excuse me. Today we'll be taking a more advanced look at Boomkin's single target DPS. We'll be looking at things such as how do I start my rotation? And how do I maintain it? Let's get started! Now, to begin here, we need to look at how we should start our rotation. Basically, we'll want to drop our mushrooms somewhere where the boss will be engaged or dragged over. Now, that way we can detonate our mushrooms once we are in a solar eclipse for some extra damage at the beginning of the fight. Also, depending on our distance from the target, we may precast a Star Surge to hit when our tank's countdown hits 1. However, if we don't feel safe doing this, we can skip the Star Surge and just move along into our Treants, Starfall, Dots, and then push towards the eclipse. Now, let's have a look at a solar start here. I've got my mushrooms down. I'm going to precast my Star Surge. When it hits, I will pop Treants, Starfall, apply my dots, head towards the solar eclipse, and when I get to the solar eclipse, I will cast one Wrath, and then I will detonate mushrooms, apply new solar dots, and head towards lunar eclipse. It's a very good way to start a fight with high burst DPS, and it is very good on fights where your distance to the target is far or exaggerated, such as Ragnaros. Now, let's have a look at a lunar start here. There are a few differences. If our eclipse bar is dead center, and we choose to precast a nuke, we will not want to use Star Surge. The reason being is that it will push our eclipse bar in the wrong direction. So, if we choose to precast a nuke, we will want to choose Wrath. Now, the other difference is, you may want to wait to pop Starfall until you are in the lunar eclipse. This way it will benefit from the lunar eclipse buff. Lastly, we will be waiting until we get all the way back over to our solar eclipse to detonate our mushrooms. Now, let's have a look at this lunar start. So, here we go, we will precast our Wrath. When it hits, pop Treants, put up your dots, and head towards the lunar eclipse. Now, once we get safely in the lunar eclipse, we will cast a Starfire, pop our Starfall, and work our way back towards the solar eclipse. We will want to wait until we get all the way over into the solar eclipse, and then we will detonate our mushrooms under the solar eclipse bonus. We'll cast a Wrath first, then we'll detonate our shrooms, and put up our new solar dots. Now, we need to have a better look at the rotation, but we need to remember a few things from the first video, namely our Star Surge usage. Now, we always want to use Star Surge on cooldown if we do not have tier 12 4-piece. The only exception to this would be if you happen to get a proc right before you enter an eclipse, say one Wrath cast before hitting Lunar, then you would go ahead and hang on to that Star Surge proc and use it once you have hit Lunar Eclipse. This way it will gain the damage buff. The only other thing is, if you do have tier 12 4-piece, simply do not hardcast Star Surge when you are not in an eclipse. But if you are not in an eclipse and you do get a proc, you can go ahead and use it. Now, let's have a look at the rotation. I'm going to start from Lunar first, and then I'm going to continue on through, and I'll talk about a few of the things that I do as I work through my rotation on a boss fight. So here we've begun to work towards a Lunar Eclipse first start, and I popped my Starfall once I hit Lunar, and now I'm working back towards Solar. I'm going to get a Star Surge proc here, and I'm going to use it because I'm not very close to Solar Eclipse yet. If I had been a little bit closer, I would have held on to it and used it in the Solar Eclipse for the additional bonus. Now, I've reapplied my dots at the beginning of Solar, and now I'm working back towards Lunar, and using the trick from the first video, I will reapply my Solar dots right here before exiting Solar. Now, my Starfall is back off cooldown, and I'm going to pop that now at the beginning of Lunar Eclipse. And my solar dots are just now falling off, so I will put up my lunar eclipse dots before leaving the lunar eclipse. And because I was able to refresh those quite late, if you look at my Nature's Grace buff below my balance power tracker bar, I'm going to wait to reapply solar dots until it runs out. That way I get more Nature's Grace uptime. This is another one of those little decisions that I make throughout a fight. And it is a very good reason why you should also track your buffs throughout a fight. Now, continuing along as usual, there is another decision that you could make in regards to this, and we will talk about that now. Now, basically we are doing a 2-1 dot refresh rotation. That is, we are refreshing our dots at the beginning of solar eclipse before we exit solar, and then once in lunar. So 2 times in solar and once in lunar. A 2-1. Now, depending on how much haste you have, it could be possible that you could only refresh once in each eclipse. Now, there is also some variation here, where one time you might refresh twice in solar, and then your lunar dots carry you back through far enough that you only refresh once in a solar eclipse. I'll just continue along here, and we'll see if an opportunity presents itself for me to show you this the right way. Here we go. It looks like this will be a good opportunity to show a transition from a 2-1 to a 1-1 refresh, as I have Berserking off cooldown, and I will use it to get to my Luna quickly, and back across. Now, my solar dots will last all the way until the end of this lunar eclipse, which will work out very well. I will refresh lunar dots here, and I will carry them as long as possible. Working back towards solar, we hit solar, and I'm not going to refresh at the beginning, just to show you this. Now I will refresh solar dots, and I refreshed late enough that I can carry them all the way back over to Luna, effectively skipping the second refresh in solar. If you have very high levels of haste, you can go back and forth like this on a fight, from a 2-1 refresh to a 1-1 refresh, and then back. This is purely optional though, as it tends to not really make that much of a difference. But if you do have very high haste, I would say 2600 or more, and you have DI buff, it will help you extend the uptime of your Nature's Grace, rather than clipping it quite so often. And as you see here, I was able to make it all the way back towards solar, and start a 2-1 again, as I refreshed at the beginning of solar, and now I will refresh again as I'm leaving, back into the 2-1 rotation. I notice here that my tree ants have been off cooldown for some time, so I will talk about that for a moment. Typically in a fight you would use your tree ants on cooldown, however if you knew that you had Bloodlust coming up soon, you might hang on to them and pop them right before the Bloodlust, so that they receive the effects of the Bloodlust. You do not want to pop them afterwards, as they would not receive the benefit of the Bloodlust. Now here's an example of holding on to a Star Surge proc. I got the proc right before hitting a solar eclipse, so I hang on to it, and I use it once I hit solar. That way it benefits from the damage. I do believe this just about covers everything that I wanted to talk about in this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I will try to answer them as soon as possible. I will put out a video about AoE damage soon, and give some advice on how to do fights like Rhyolith and Beth Talak. But thank you for watching, and have a great day.